Can the administration talk about this concern that has cropped up over missing middle housing? Mr. Mayor?
Sure, thanks for the question, and Mr. Zody, I think, is available too if you want more detail. But let me just, this is not any stratagem to support a Plex program in core neighborhoods. The housing program that is outlined, which is desperately needed, is to really support three different buckets within the housing. One is those who are virtually homeless, experiencing deep poverty. I want to remind you that in our biannual city survey, 90% of that scientific survey's respondents either strongly or moderately want the city to invest in supportive housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. So one bucket is about those who are at the most needy end. There's also a bucket for workforce housing, particularly rental, and then a bucket for home ownership, to increase home ownership. Talking the reference in, I guess there are 4 words in there that say support missing middle housing types, could be used, for example, in Hopewell, in the new development, to help try to create some co-housing or some new kinds of housing. It could be used in new areas where we see it. It is not an attempt to shoehorn plexes in the zoning pattern. So let me just be clear about that. If you want more detail, we certainly look forward to working with that in the budget detail. This is an overarching proposal for revenue earmarking for certain purposes, and one of the important purposes is affordable housing.
You're welcome.
Before you go, the term missing housing types, which actually is in the light item, is what seems to have triggered what we heard from some of the public. It's kind of a sounding an alarm that was a bit of a trigger, I think, for some folks. But just to assure anyone who has concerns about that, that's not necessarily meaning the same thing as a subsidy or incentivizing additional density in neighborhoods necessarily. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about what is meant by missing housing types? Where exactly, and I know you've done a really great explanation of what HAND will do and leveraging and the housing needs that are truly there for affordable and home ownership and all that good stuff. But missing housing types, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, just to give a couple examples. This is rumors, and there is no intent to fund or relitigate the issue that we went through with the zoning. And I'm sorry people wouldn't reach out and ask us about it. We'd be happy to talk about that, but thank you for asking. So examples of missing housing types, and it's really just a phrase to describe some of the work we're planning, but 2 examples. One, we just helped fund, actually through CDFI Friendly Bloomington, but also locally with housing, the co-op that is going to create housing for 18 people on Butler Park on 9th Street. That's a housing type that's not very common in Bloomington, but is creating really strong affordability for people through co-op housing. So this fund could be used to help strengthen the co-op housing effort to create that kind of housing type. Another example would be, well, gosh, I was thinking about another specific example that popped in my head, but I just got thinking about that 18 unit on Butler Park, and that got exciting. Another example, though, could be co-housing. We may want to encourage the development of co-housing, the smaller units with shared space that we think could be facilitated with some co-investment from us to help that. That could be done in Hopewell. That could be done in a particular location. It is meant to help explore. It could be looking at lower cost manufactured housing or pre-made housing or ADUs that we could facilitate. It's really just a concept that says, as we're working on those 3 buckets that Mr. Zody talked about, let's think about how we can facilitate that kind of growth. It is not in any way meant to say there's going to be a tax fund that's dedicated on creating new plexes in core neighborhoods. That is not what it's about.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Zody. Any further questions? Mr. Smith?
May I just say one additional thing, Councilmember Sandberg?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, just to add to the mayor's point, I think what really eludes us a lot of times is that affordable home ownership, right? How do you get a new homeowner, a first-time homeowner, a young professional, a family of any income? how do you get them in a home to buy? And, Habitat is one of the leaders of affordable home ownership, but who else? And how do we incentivize that and make sure that we are looking at that all across the city, not just in one area or here or there, it's everywhere. And that takes a lot. It's sometimes a one-off, one-piece effort, and it's a big one. On the rental side, I would say one missing piece, missing housing, is the workforce housing. We see a lot of 80, when you look at income bands, it's 80% of area median income and below, 120% of area median income, and the workforce housing band is something that we're really taking a keen look at. We have for a long time, but now that we see employers growing and hiring, it's certainly something that is big and on our plate. So I think we have to be very mindful of all types of affordable housing, and that includes that workforce housing where people are making a steady income that puts them in those upper brackets, but also makes housing tough because of where the market is here. So I'll leave it there.
Oh, again, thanks for the clarification. Councilmember Smith had a hand up, and then anyone else have a question?
I just wanted to ask, John, Mr. Zody, you can respond to is if that phrase is really, bothering people in a way, can't we just put a comma and say, not for this kind of housing or not for this type of initiative, or delete it? Is because we're not seeing the final proposal right now, and when it comes to us, I mean, to allay people's concerns and worries about that, can we just not edit that document and take that out?
Well, Councilmember, I'm not sure I'm the best to answer this question because there could be, I want to make sure we're not sort of running afoul of anything that I'm not sure I'm the best to answer that question. Mayor, do you want to chime in there? And I'm not trying to be evasive, council member. I just want to be careful on how I phrase that.
Thank you, Mr. Zody.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mayor. Thank you for the question. I'm just looking at the phrase. I don't, if it's a problem, we can remove that phrase. It's just trying to give illustration that it could be used for some of that, but if it's, we're happy to talk about how to edit that. And I've tried to give assurance that it's not meant for that effort that some people have hypothesized it is. So happy to talk about changing that language.
Sure, sure. We just want to be responsive to people in the community.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Councilmember